You earn a talent every 15 levels, which sounds scary, but it'll make sense in just a minute. Every time you get to choose a talent, there are 3 choices, and you get to pick one of those. Once you pick one, you can't go back and get the other 2. So you're really going to have to make a hard choice of, do I want shiny object A, B, or C? Our goal is there are no mandatory talents. If you're a healer, you should not see, oh, I have to take this talent because I'm a healer. There may be 3 healing talents, and you pick which one you think would be the most fun, or which one fits your play style, or maybe which one matches this certain fight you're about to do. But we shouldn't ever see anyone saying, oh, you have to get this, or you're just doing it wrong. We also think an important concept here is that you can change talents fairly easily, about as easily as you can change glyphs. So, not the kind of thing you can do in combat, but say you pick the fear talent, and you go into a fight where everything's immune to fear, you can say, hang on a sec, I'm going to respec to the stun talent instead, because I know that's useful in this fight. So I'm just going to walk you through the UI here. Our UI designers have done a great job coming up with a new system. This one should look fairly familiar. We changed it from vertical to horizontal, but you still pick a spec at level 10. And then these are all the abilities you would get. In this case, you're picking the Holy Paladin. Holy Shock's still at level 10, and then a slew of other things you get at higher level. A lot of these will be familiar. A couple of these you're probably saying, ooh, that looks interesting and new. Holy Wrath, Holy Only. And then here's the Paladin talent tree. Every level, every time you get to make a talent choice, you get to pick one of these. These are all very powerful. They should feel very unique and very exciting. I really want to emphasize that. You'll see some familiar names in here, but don't assume that it works exactly the same way it does on live. Sanctified Wrath, for example, we had to make the kind of thing that a Holy Paladin or Protection Paladin would also say, you know what, that's something I could really use, that sounds fun, I want to try it. We think this system, as Tom said at the beginning, is going to give players a lot of cool stuff to geek out over, rather than just saying, hey, what's the cookie cutter spec I need before I can go raiding or PvP. You really want to look at this and analyze and say, I think Veneration sounds fun, but then I'm going to get Sanctified Wrath instead of Divine Purpose, that sort of thing. It's pretty exciting. I think once you see all of the individual talents here, you'll be pretty excited about it too. So here's an example of the Paladin choosing at level 15, choosing Speed of Light, and then the other choices. You can't ever pick 2 things in one row. We knew when we started out here that the only way to really get you guys to understand how this system works is to go through every freaking talent in the game. So we're going to do a panel right after this one, and we're going to walk you through every class and say, here are your talents, enjoy. All right, I'm going to turn things back over to Tom again.
All right, so we've got more new features to talk about. As you guys may have seen, there was a little bullet point that went by in the preview trailer about scenarios, these PvE scenarios. And you might be asking yourself, what the hell is a PvE scenario? What do they mean? So what a PvE scenario is it's a way for us to give you interesting new things to do that don't really make a whole lot of sense in the context of a typical dungeon, right? A dungeon is all about you go out there and you fight trash, you kill a boss, you fight trash, you kill a boss. And they're usually taking place in these kind of unique areas that we create for the purposes of a dungeon. Scenarios are more about reusing parts of the world that we've either already created in interesting new ways. I'll go over one example, which is the Battle for Goldshire. And it also gives us the ability to do some interesting new types of PvE gameplay that we've never seen before. One way to characterize that potentially would be able to kind of label them as PvE battlegrounds. So what are they? These are short instances for a few players. The number of players can vary based on what the scenario is. The scenario can be for 3 players, for example. And these are all designed for players that are playing their character in a similar way as they would when they're questing. So you don't have the typical tank, heal, DPS type setups for these types of scenarios that you would for a dungeon. It's a staged experience, or at least in many cases it is, where you'll have different phases of the scenario that you go through and you're trying to accomplish some greater goal. And here's one example, right? So these are purely theoretical examples. This isn't an actual scenario that we're in the process of creating. But if you can imagine for a moment a scenario called the Defense of Goldshire, and let's pretend for a little bit that you and a couple buddies are in there, and your job is at first to clear out a bunch of kobolds. You got to find and return some children in the town, and then kill Goldtooth. And this would be the type of scenario that we would do as an introductory scenario. Maybe we first introduce this scenario at level 10 for players that are leveling up for the first time. But we would even design it in such a way where you could do like a level 90 version of it, so that even if you never got a chance to do it, or you just kind of wanted to go back and do it again, you'd be able to do that. And of course, with our philosophy of being able to do whatever it is you want to do to progress your character, you'd still be able to get Valor points out of doing it at level 90. So, here we are imagining, these are all fake screenshots, by the way, so. Whoa, big gold tooth. Another example that I kind of called out is the idea of being able to do PvE battlegrounds. This is the kind of thing that we've never really done before, we've never really been able to do before, and we'd like to take a stab at doing some stuff like this. So if you imagine this, imagine that this is the Battle of Grizzly Gulch, the Battle of GG. And let's, again, purely hypothetical example, let's imagine that this is a Defense of the Ancient style battleground, right? Except there are no enemy players on the other side. Because there are a lot of players out there that would love to do battleground type content, but are kind of, freaked out by fighting other players, or, makes them really nervous, or they just don't like that kind of thing. So this gives us the ability to do a lot of those similar kinds of mechanics in a PvE setting. And that also allows us to do some slightly different things that we wouldn't normally be able to do. So imagine that you and a couple buddies are in charge of going down the lanes of this PvE battleground called the Battle of Grizzly Gulch. You've got to slay enough soldiers to get your characters powered up, and then dominate the enemy defenses to destroy their 6 towers and the barracks, and then out comes the boss, and you'll have to apply the beat down to General Drake. Here's actually a map that we've been working on a little bit. This one is like an extension of a Defense of the Ancient style battleground that we're currently working on, so you can kind of imagine the scenario taking place in an environment like this. So these scenarios have a wide variety of different applications that really give us the ability to do new things that we haven't done before with dungeons, because those are very much about tank, heal, DPS, fight some mobs, tank them, heal them, beat them down, boss, etc. Another important point here is that there isn't player collision, that these are designed to be PvE. And one other way to look at these is that they could potentially replace group quests. I know that a lot of you probably experienced way back in the day when we used to do a lot more group quests out in the outdoor world, but we always had problems with, some people would be halfway into doing the group quest when you join up with the quest, and you kind of have to start over again, and all the kind of awkwardness of, LFGing inside, trade chat or whatever, or in an LFG chat for that zone of trying to find a group to do your group quest. Because this gives us a more elegant way to use some of those interesting outdoor areas to do group style questing. So that brings us to how it kind of works, and kind of a little look into that. Now, not surprisingly, this is the type of queue and go sort of scenario, like a dungeon finder. So you'd pop open a UI and you'd queue for it. And on the upside, no role requirements. It kind of implies automatically very short queues. Yeah. So you might even be able to imagine being able to do something like this while you're waiting for your dungeon queue to pop, because they're intended to be pretty quick experiences. And of course, this is one of many different options to earn Valor points to progress your character. So now let's talk about another one of those new features that went by, and that's Challenge Mode Dungeons. Hopefully this will be something that excites a lot of you in the room. I don't know how many of you guys were around way back in the day when we had this thing called the 45-minute Baron Run. So that was pretty exciting, and I've always really wanted for us to be able to do that sort of thing again and really institutionalize it in a way that adds a whole new type of gameplay. Granted, there were some not fun elements to it. For example, like if it was blocking your progression to getting your tier 1.5 set back in the day, that part of it was a little bit of a downer. But That won't happen here. So what are challenge mode dungeons? Dungeons, as you know, are these experiences that you guys go through already. But wouldn't it be interesting if we had essentially time trial versions of these dungeons? And so challenge modes really are that. When you set yourself into a challenge mode and you group up with your buddies or potentially queue into a challenge mode dungeon, the purpose of doing this is going to be to complete the dungeon in a specified amount of time. And so that implies a whole different level of coordination and teamwork that you don't necessarily get when you're just sort of plodding through, either because you're new to the dungeon or you're just trying to get the loot out of it and you're just kind of taking your time to do whatever. And you'll rip through there as fast as you can in order to earn bronze, silver, or gold medals for doing it as quickly as you possibly can. The gear levels for these are normalized, which is another important distinction here. So what that means is that, for example, if you were to apply that to today's world, you would all be brought down to the same level of gear. All your gear would scale down to the same level of gear, some standard level, that you would go through this. So it isn't the kind of thing that you can just get better gear to overpower your way through. So when you're able to, talk about, So you'll be able to brag to your buddies about how you got that, 23-minute run, and you'll know that it's a fair basis of comparison because everybody's gear was at the same level. And what do you get out of it, other than Valor points, of course? You also get sweet-looking gear with no stats. What might that be for? Transmogrify, perhaps. So we're going to create an entire tier of gear that has a unique and special look that you'll be able to get exclusively by doing challenge modes. So if you do the challenge modes and you rip through there and you get the gold medal in all the different dungeons, you'll be able to earn yourself an entire set of gear to show off to your friends about what a badass you are for being able to clear these dungeons as quickly as you can. So that summarizes the way challenge mode dungeons work. Really a big part of this for us is giving you the ability to have bragging rights and leaderboards. So that's going to be a big part of this feature. It's going to feel like competitive PvE in a sense. So we want to be able to do things like, when you open your character sheet, you'll be able to see your best times for any given dungeon. You'll be able to see what the rewards are for the different dungeons if you complete them in gold, silver, or bronze times. You'll also be able to compare yourself to your guildmates and other people on your realm. So you'd be able to pop open a UI and see, what are the top times for people on this realm for this dungeon. Get yourself on that leaderboard. Show people what a badass you really are. And so that sums it up for challenge modes. With that, we are going to hand it over to Corey to talk about the pet battle system.
All right, I'm super hyped to talk to you guys about this feature because I think pets are something that pretty much everyone that plays World of Warcraft probably has a pet in some way, shape, or form. I don't think not necessarily everyone is a collector and has all the achievements, but it's definitely something that I think everyone knows what it is, and it's a feature we definitely felt like we could expand upon and offer some new gameplay. Whoa. There we go. So what exactly are we doing here? Essentially, you're going to be able to collect, you're going to level, and you're going to fight with your pets. So we're going to go through all of these in a little bit more detail. But first, some key elements. First of all, it's accessible to everyone. We didn't want it to be a feature that was locked to the max level that only a few people would get access to. We wanted it something to be that everyone could do. So you'll be able to start this at a really low level and start collecting pets, leveling them up, and building your team. Another thing is it's going to work with almost every pet in the game right now, as well as a ton of new pets that we're going to be adding for the system for you to collect. So for all you people already out there that already have, say you've got 100 pets, most likely almost all of those pets are going to work with the system right when you get it. Now granted, you're going to have to level them on your own, but they'll still be able to work with the system. It's also going to be a lot of customization, things like being able to name your pets, things like being able to have different ones, giving them individual abilities. We'll get into that more in a little bit. So as far as collection goes, how does that work? Like I said, it's going to work with your existing pets. So a lot of people are going to start the system and already have a pet to start with and get it going. There's another type of pet you're going to be able to get that we're introducing new for Mists of Pandaria, and this is going to be called a wild pet. And the way wild pets work is you're going to find them out in the world. Essentially, when you find them, you're going to be able to engage in battle with them and fight with them using a pet that you already have. And then you're going to be able to get that pet and add him to your collection. Now, what's cool about these wild pets is that they have random varying stats. So you're not necessarily going to just go out and be able to get all the wild pets you want, within that first week, because they're going to have varying stats. So you might want a pet that's really good at, say, tanking, or a pet that maybe has like a CC ability. So you're going to keep wanting to collect these pets until you find that one that has the right set of stats. Then you can start leveling it up. The other thing about the wild pets that's pretty cool is that they have unique spawning abilities. So, for example, certain wild pets you might only find during a certain season, like winter. Certain pets you might only find when it's raining, for example. Certain pets might only spawn during the day or the night. So there could be a pet that only shows up during the spring while it's raining in Elwyn Forest at night. Now, they're not all going to be like that, obviously, but we definitely want to mix it up so that people have a lot of pets to collect over a long period of time. We don't want you to just go out right away and get all of them. We want it to be a system that lasts. Now, how are you going to find these pets? We're going to change the pet interface we have now and introduce something called the Pet Journal. What the Pet Journal is going to do is let you manage all your existing pets you have, as well as the teams and the battling and everything that goes along with the new system. We've got a few UI shots that we'll show you to give you a little bit more of a rundown about how the journal works. The other thing along with this is that most pets are going to become tradable. So what this means is you're going to be able to, say, get the Whippletinger from an event, like the Brewfest event, and then be able to take it and, say, level it up to a certain level, maybe teach it some abilities. Then you can go and take that pet and throw it on the auction house, and someone else could get it. And based on the amount of time and work you put into it, obviously it's going to sell for what people think that's worth. So we really wanted the system to feel like something that you could trade pets, not only in the auction house, but with your buddies and your friends, your guildies, other players. This is a huge one. We're really working hard to have this, is to have account-wide pets. Meaning that obviously if you have a set of pets on one character, you log in another character, you'd be able to use those same pets. If you got a pet up to level 14, you log in another character, that pet's still level 14 and you have it. You don't have to do it again multiple times for all the pets. So here's a look at the pet journal. Just like the mock-ups Tom showed you earlier, these are all mock-ups of how we think the UI would work from our UI team. So over there on the left, you've got your list of pets. You can search and filter through to find the ones you want. And then over on the right, you can see that pet's stats. And then at the bottom, you can see the abilities that they've unlocked. We're looking at unlocking something like 6 abilities over 25 levels. And then on the right, there's an interesting spot called location. And if you click that, you're actually going to be able to find out where can you get this pet in the world. So instead of having to alt-tab out of the game, go to the web and go to a database site and try to find out, well, where can I find this guy? Where does he spawn? Where do I get him? Similar to what we did with the Dungeon Journal, where you could see all the items and find out what bosses drop them, you're going to be able to find out where to get all your pets straight out of the journal from within the game. So now you've collected some pets, you've got a good amount of them, you're managing them, now you've got to level them. How do you do this? Well, you fight with other pets. And when you win battles, you earn experience, and experience levels your pet. As you level, you're going to learn new abilities that you can then use in battle. Now, you're also going to have slots to place these abilities in. Every pet can use 3 abilities in battle at one time. So a pet's going to learn 6, and you get to choose any 3 of those and place them on your pet to use in the battle. And I've got it mock up so you guys can see how this looks too. Every time you level, you're going to earn stats as well. So the higher level your pet, obviously it's going to be stronger as it's growing. Now you're going to be able to level multiple pets because you're going to want to build a team. You don't want to just take one pet and get them all the way up. You might want to take a couple pets and level them all up together so that you can have a team of pets that are at similar level. So here's a look at the team interface. So this is also within the journal. It's just a different tab. And so here we've got a team. This guy has 2 pets on his team, and you can see those 3 slots for abilities where he's dragged an ability in. And those are the abilities that when this pet goes into battle, that's what shows up on the bar, and you can press that ability to use it. So over on the left, these are the pets and their level, and then on the right, you just drag them over, and that's how you would build a team. Now, how does the fighting work, right? So now you've got a pet, you've leveled them up, you want to actually fight against someone and use all this stuff that you've been earning. So you're going to be able to fight both in PvE in the world against the wild pets, but you're also going to be able to fight friends and possibly enemies using the PvP battle as well. One thing that's different, it's going to be turn-based. So we wanted to slow things down a little bit from WoW combat. WoW combat's super fast. You know, people can sometimes die in like 15, 20 seconds right away. So we wanted to introduce something that felt a little different, could slow it down, and it's something that's a little bit more of a thinking game. So mechanics-wise, you know, it's not going to be something that's going to move so quickly, you're not necessarily going to miss it or know what happened. So we wanted to give something that felt a little bit different. So it could be, you know, just people that might want to focus on that could have a different piece of content to focus on. Kind of like we were saying earlier, that we want content for everyone. We want to have a feature that a lot of different people could play, not just something that's for a small segment of the population. So you're going to fight with a team of 3, and we're going to allow you to queue. Just like we have dungeon queuing, you know, you'd be able to queue up and go against another group, and we'd look at the level of their pets so we could make sure that we put you against other pets that were within the same range. So hopefully you'd have a fight that feels there's something about the level that you could handle. So here's a look at what it would look like. This is just a mock-up. So one thing that's important is we want to keep the WoW characters in the scenes for the fights, because they're important. They're the ones that are collecting the pets. They're the masters of the whole system. So, and we want to have the WoW characters actually be a part of it. When your pet does an ability, you know, your guy might do an emote. He might do something that makes sense going along with that ability that you used. You can see the bar at the bottom has the abilities you'd be casting, and then you can see your other pets kind of underneath the portraits there. This is just a mock-up, like we said, but it's, you know, something we could envision it looking like. So customization, like I said earlier, naming your pets is a big thing. So you could have a pet that you've had for a really long time, and you finally be able to give them a name and then see that name in battle. We're also talking about having items. So imagine the idea that you could have an item that we'd have an item slot on the pet. You can equip an item. Maybe you could even put gems in that item so you could modify the stats on the pet as well. So we could pull in some of the profession systems. You're going to be able to do individual builds like we were showing you earlier with abilities. So you can take a certain pet and change his abilities and change his slots out so that your team will feel different from other teams around you. And finally, we've kind of got this concept of masters. So you're going to be able, we wanted to really have people that are into the system feel like they could travel around the world and have a reason to go to other places. So you're going to be able to go to, like, say you're going to go to Daenerys and there's a goblin there that's really great with training mechanical pets. So you'd be able to go there and fight him, and if you can beat him, he'll grant you what we're calling a master ability. And then you could use that ability on any of your pets to fight in battle. So here's the look at how this could work. So this guy's got 3 abilities at the top right now, and then he's chosen a master, and then over on the right we see the map, and that shows you where you can go to fight that master and the ability that you could get. So it just adds a little bit more depth and customization into the system as a whole. So that kind of wraps up the core features. So now I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about some of the dungeons that we're expecting to have. We're looking at doing 9 new dungeons for Mists of Pandaria. We're super excited to be able to do a lot of different new dungeons, a lot of awesome looks. There's going to be 6 dungeons specifically on Pandaria that you're going to be able to fight in. We also have something coming back that we found was very popular with Cataclysm. So a few updates of classics. And so we picked a couple. Scholomance. And what's cool about this is we've gone into Scholomance and it's got a new layout. It's gonna have bosses that are reworked with all new abilities. It's gonna be a little bit easier to navigate, not so complicated, but still it's gonna feel really cool, really fresh. And we're gonna talk a ton about it in the dungeon panel later today. The other one is Scarlet Monastery. So Scarlet, as you know it now, has 4 wings, but some of these wings only have 1 boss, and then we have another wing that has a ton of bosses. So we wanted to take it and make it feel a little bit more even. So we're going to redo Scarlet Monastery completely and introduce it as 2 separate wings as their own unique dungeons with their own bosses. We got a few screenshots of a couple of the new dungeons. This is the Stormstout Brewery here. You're going to be helping Chin Stormstout recapture this brewery for his family heritage. This is a look at the Shadowpan Monastery. It's a really awesome outdoor dungeon. And this is the Temple of the Jade Serpent, which is in the first zone, the Jade Forest. It's another dungeon that goes indoor and outdoor. It's something we're trying to do with a lot of the dungeons, is get a whole different vibe with players going both indoor and outdoor at different times. So not to be left out, we're also obviously going to be introducing new raids. We're looking at having 3 raids to launch with. The races we're looking to feature in these raids are the Mogu and the Mantid, which we talked about a little earlier as kind of being 2 of our pillar enemy races. To definitely fit well into the whole raid vibe as far as having creatures that you're going to want to kill. So as you know, we're introducing Raid Finder with 4.3 for the Dragon Soul raid. In Mists of Pandaria, Raid Finder is going to be available for all raids, right from day 1. So all the raids are going to have essentially 3 difficulty levels of Raid Finder, Normal, and Heroic right off the bat. We think it's going to be great because it's going to give that other level for people that are looking to get into raiding a chance to do that with content that really fits for them. And like Tom mentioned earlier, we're looking to bring back world raid bosses. I think the big thing here is that obviously there were problems with them originally, but I think we've figured out solutions to those problems, to the fact of them staying camped, to the fact that they drop very specific pieces of gear that players need. We've got solutions to those problems, so why not bring them back? They were something that players really liked, so that's something we really want to do here for Mists of Pandaria. Like I said, we'll have a lot more info on this at the Raid and Dungeons panel later today. So questing. What's going on with quests in the new game? Couple different things. One thing is we definitely want to focus on more max level content. It's something that we saw with Cataclysm, that people burned right through the content very quickly, and we saw that they really wanted more content to do at max level. So it's something we want to focus on here. We still obviously want a strong leveling experience along the way, but we want to make sure when you get there, you have a lot of stuff to do and stuff that can give you Valor points that you can do at that level. So this is that kind of thing. We really want to focus on that. Things like the Molten Front from 4.2, we want to do things like that right from the beginning so players have different choices when they hit level 90. So we're talking about having multiple hubs for that kind of stuff all over the world. Those will play into the factions as well, but it'll give players a different thing to do at max level and not just necessarily the same options that they've always had historically. Another thing that goes along with that is maybe giving some incentives to Dungeon and our Raid players for doing outdoor daily kind of stuff. So for example, say, if you did 5 daily quests, you would get a buff. And that buff, if you happen to go into a dungeon with that buff, you might get a chance to roll on a piece of loot that only shows up to the players that have that buff. So maybe you went out and did a few dailies first and then go and do the dungeon. It helps kind of motivate some play there from both sides. So like I was talking about a little earlier with Valley of the Four Winds, we're really looking to make the quests feel less linear. So not the fact that they're always going to feel completely different, but the fact that we give you some choices. So when you come back and you go through a zone, you can do it in a little bit of a different level. Same thing with flying from max level. We mentioned this earlier. It's just something that feels better to not have that. To keep people on their ground mounts, we can introduce different types of quest content that really fits. And we don't have to worry so much about people flying up in the air and landing on the boss mob to kill them right away without clearing anything along the way. It just really, I don't know, it doesn't have that good vibe to it. You didn't feel like you really did it. You kind of cheated a little bit and flew in. So by keeping people on the ground, it'll really feel better. Finally, faction improvements. Factions are something we've had in the game for a long time. We've done a number of different things with them. And here we're looking to shake it up again with offering players more ways to earn the items they want. So, whereas you look right now, we ended Cataclysm and we had Tol Barad, and we had a number of great items there, but it was kind of your only option. of a place to go. We want to have more options for players to go, but still be able to use all those options towards getting the gear that they want. So we're looking at having groups of factions, and you can do any quest within these factions that you want, but they all lead towards that awesome, flying mount reward, or that one thing that you really want to get. So you don't feel like you have to grind so much. We want factions to be fun. We don't want them to feel grindy. And that's something we're really going to be focusing on here. So do we have a lot of PvPers here? Great. So we're talking about doing some new battlegrounds. We don't know exactly which of these battlegrounds we're going to do. These are all ideas that we're working on, but we figured it's Blizzcon, so we'll fill you guys in on the stuff we're thinking about, and we'll talk about a few of them. So we're looking at a couple different types of battlegrounds here with different gameplay styles. Obviously we've had CTF, and we've had kind of capture King of the Hill style games where you have to hold a certain area to earn points. So we're looking to do a couple different styles of battleground here. Another thing is we're looking to do a new arena. Right now we're calling it the Tolvir Proving Grounds, and this is located out in Old Doom. I'll have some screenshots to show you of this in a little bit. So first, let's talk about the Stranglethorn Diamond Mine. The concept behind this is it's a goblin mine below northern Stranglethorn. Alliance and Horde are fighting over it to get these minerals out of it. And we're looking at doing a payload-style gameplay. So essentially, you'd have these mine cars that you have to escort to a depot. When it hits the depot, you'd get points. We're looking at multiple tracks within the actual mine itself, and the first team, essentially, to escort enough cars to the depots and get the points would win. But it would feel very varied with a lot of different options every time you play, because you could get a mine car and send it on a different track each time. And we're also talking about having you actually be able to, in the middle of the game, send the car off to a different track. A track could split, and a player could sit there and decide which way he wants it to go. So it's a unique kind of style of gameplay, something that we feel like could be really cool with WoW's PvP. So this is a look at a map of how that could work. There in the center where it says Diamond Mine would be where the carts start. And then there's a couple different tracks that lead all the way around the cave. And you can see some of the tracks split and go in different directions. There's some bridges there where when a track goes across a bridge, you could knock guys off the bridge. There's all kinds of opportunities to do cool things here. Here's some concept art for this one. This is one we've definitely gotten a little bit of progress on, to the point where we've got some playable prototypes. So next up, there's one we're talking about called the Valley of Power. And this would be about getting an ancient Mogu artifact and capturing that artifact. And Alliance and Horde both want it because it would offer power for their war against the other side. Now, the way the gameplay would work is essentially you'd have an object, and you pick up the object, and the longer you hold it, your team earns points. Now, depending on where you stand in the area of the actual map, you could earn more or less points. So if you run off in the corner and hide, you're going to earn less. But if you stay out in the middle where it's wide open, you would earn more points. The ball itself would be doing damage to you, so the longer you hold it, you're taking more and more damage. So you'd need healers with you to keep you alive. But it's a really fun style of gameplay. It's something we think, again, would fit really, really well with WoW. So here's a look at how something like this could work. We'd have some start areas on the two sides. That's a ledge going all the way around. And then some stairs that lead down kind of into a recessed area. And the orb is right there in the center. So you'd start and run right through for it. We've got a couple simple pillars for line of sight, but really a simple map. For something like this, the gameplay is all about the combat. You don't really necessarily need a lot of line of sight blockers or things in the map to make it fun. And here's what I was talking about with the point values. You could see the farther away you are, the less points you would earn. Closer to the middle, the more you would get. The concept piece of where this could fit into the world. And finally, we've got Tolvir Proving Grounds. We haven't done a new arena in a long time, so we thought, maybe it's time to add another one in. A lot of players are very happy with the arenas that we have now, so we've been tentative to add a new one. But this really felt like a cool opportunity to use a really neat piece of art and do an arena that could be simple and that players would really like. So we based it off Nagrand Arena, which is one of our most popular arenas. And it's got a great sense of place in the world because it feels like it could be in Old Doom. When you go there, you would know exactly that it fits. So here's a look at it from the top down. It's just a simple square with 4 line of sight blockers. They're kind of on angles a little different than Nagrand, but the layout in general is very similar. And then here's a look at it from the side of how it could fit in Old Doom. So we have one other new feature we're talking about adding in, and Greg's going to tell you about it.
You guys still with us? We're almost done. We're almost done.
We're getting close.
Go to the bathroom soon. Achievements. Let's do this. It's pretty much all we can say about it. We're going to take some of the achievements and let them be shared across all the characters you have, particularly things like the raid achievements and some of the ones that are more difficult to get. And then this will also give us the possibility to introduce some new types of achievements. So, for example, we could say, get every profession to max level, which would be really cruel to do for one character, but across your stable of characters it'd be kind of fun. So look for this soon. All right. Talk a little bit about some class changes coming up. I think most of these are pretty exciting. First one is a change we're going to try for resilience. We really like the way resilience works as a stat for PvP. We like the way that when you're hardcore at the very competitive levels, getting even a little bit more resilience can make a big difference. And we know that it gives you a good goal to work towards and makes the PvP gear rewarding. Our concern is that it's a big barrier of entry into Battlegrounds or Arena. There used to be a day when you could kind of come in your PvE gear and gradually work up to better PvP gear. Players have told us now they feel like they just can't compete in PvP at all because there's such a big step up. So the way we're going to try to do this is to treat resilience as a base stat, which means you'll get a little bit every time you level up. Even naked, your character will have some resilience. And then as you get PvP gear, you'll get up to the kind of resilience you have now. We don't want PvE gear to be the best gear for PvP, but we want it to be something you can use, and vice versa. All right. A few other things I'm going to talk about. The future of ranged weapons, warlocks, shaman, and druids. I can't talk about everyone, but we still love you. Just had to throw that out there. Okay, ranged weapons. Ooh. I'm just going to milk this for a second, so just... Okay, it's gone. So once we decided to make this change, then we're left with, what does the hunter do with their melee weapon? It's just a stat stick. So hunters don't need melee weapons anymore. You just get your ranged weapon, you're good to go. And the funniest thing about this is we went really quick from everything as a hunter weapon to nothing as a hunter weapon. Okay, this leads to some other questions that I'll hit real quick. We don't think we even need a range slot for all of the other characters. I know, it's crazy. We think the relic slot is like one of the least interesting pieces of gear we can introduce. It's got some stats on it, but we don't drop them in dungeons and raids. You pretty much get your new one every tier and you're good to go. There's not a lot of gameplay there. Honestly, we don't think we'll really miss it. The rogue and warrior will just throw their melee weapons when they need to do ranged attacks. So that's what I mean here is literally the gun, bow, and crossbow are hunter weapons, and the other classes don't ever want them. And then finally, we know some of you casters want to be Harry Potter. So rather than cutting the wand completely, we'll just make it a main hand weapon. So like you have your caster dagger, your spell sword, sometimes you'll get a wand. It'll be statted like the other items. You can use it in your main hand. Warlocks. I'm just kidding. I beat on Paladins so much, I had to show love. Warlocks are one of those classes we wanted to take a really hard look at with the new talent system because we thought once some of those kind of signature abilities are available to any warlock, you're really left with like a bunch of guys that are kind of using similar spells and doing similar things. We really thought there's a lot of room to kind of push Affliction, Demo, and Destro away from each other a little bit. So the way we're going to try this is we have a unique resource for every spec. We're going to keep soul shards for Affliction. We like the improvements we made for soul shards in Cataclysm. We totally agree with the feedback that they're not quite interesting enough, and we have some cool ideas for them. But soul shards will be something Affliction uses. You pick Affliction at level 10, you get shards. If you pick Destro or Demo, you're going to have something different. Demonology is a new resource called Demonic Fury. You build up Demonic Fury by doing stuff, and when you hit max Demonic Fury, you then metamorphosize. So rather than it being a cooldown, you can try to build it up constantly. You can try to be in demon form a little more often. We're going to do some new, cooler abilities that you get to have in demon form. We think this will make the Spectres play very differently. And we have a new resource for Destruction. Destruction has always been a little tricky to design because it kind of feels like, hey, I'm the warlock who thinks he's a mage. And we just don't think that's a rich enough kit for Destro. We feel like Destro's been, could stand to have a little more excitement going on. What Infernal Embers are, as you can imagine, the Destro warlock who keeps casting fire spells slowly gets hotter and hotter and eventually catches on fire. And when you hit this fire space, then your conflags do really crazy damage. The problem with ever having those big destruction nukes be too powerful is the burst issues we have. But if you have to build up to get to that point, we think we can handle throwing some really massive conflags out there. So this will be the kind of thing, again, you can build it up pretty quickly, hit your big nuke, and then build it up again. We think this will be just a lot more fun overall to play the spec. And then if you want to switch specs to Affliction or Demo, you're going to feel pretty different. Shaman. This isn't a really big section, but we think totems are a really cool mechanic, but we agree that it's not so fun to constantly be dropping, I need my Strength of Earth, I need whatever, just to do competitive DPS or healing, and just to kind of be the buff bitch for everyone else in the group. We'll still keep the concept of buffs. You'll still bring them with you to a group, but it'll just be something you can have innate or cast like Arcane Int or something like that. We want all totems to be about utility. And that means we have to fill in the design space a little bit with some new totems. So we have an Earth Grab totem that does a big root around it. We have the crazy Repulsion totem that keeps people from getting close to the shaman or wherever they put the totem. And then we have the Bulwark totem, which puts a shield on the shaman and helps them to take a little more damage. Now, when we talk about the shaman talent tree here in just a little bit, you'll see how some of these totems fit into the talent tree. Some are core and some are talents you have to choose, the exclusion of others. And druids. This is a pretty short section, but it kind of shows what we can do with this new spec and talent system we have. Druids always felt like they had 4 specs. So now they do. Feral stays as the cat-based melee DPS spec, but we're adding a new spec called Guardian, and this is the bear spec. There'll still be a lot of overlap between the two. Some of the fun of playing the druid is the flexibility, and in fact, when we talk about the talent trees, you'll see they're really trying to go after the player who wants to be able to shift around into lots of different forms. So there'll be a lot of overlap between the Feral and Guardian spec, but overall, if you want to be the tank for your group, you would probably want to pick Guardian. And all druids can still go cat or bear form. You're not losing that ability. All right, just because we didn't mention you, I still want to think that we're not doing anything for you in Mist of Pandaria. We have done a massive spellbook cleanup. We've gotten rid of some more junk. We've tried to find roles for some of those spells that never actually did anything. We want to clean up action bars a little bit, but not removing the fun things, just kind of removing this spell has such a very narrow niche that I don't use it often. Rotations are improved, kind of how I mentioned for Warlocks. We're doing that pass on all of the specs, even if we're not changing your core resource. You now automatically learn spells in the field. You don't have to go back and visit your trainer. It always makes us cry a little inside to see a level 15 or 20 player going along and they have all these spells they haven't learned yet because it's just not worth it going back to the trainer. This feels pretty good. Trainers will still be there for things like respecking. Lots of new spells. There's a lot in the talent trees. There are a few new core spells where it makes sense. We're still thinking about giving everyone a new level 87 spell. Level 90, you'll get your final talent point, but we might give you a new spell at 87. Specs more developed, like I mentioned with the Warlock and Druid. And overall, we really want talent trees to be fun. They shouldn't be a chore. They shouldn't be the thing you just, look up on the internet to find your cookie cutter build. They should be something you can really obsess over and have a lot of fun with. And I think that wraps it up for us. As you can see, the team has been crazy hard at work on this. Usually when we talk about a new expansion, we have a couple of concept pieces and that's it. But our artists, programmers, producers, the whole team has really been kicking ass trying to get this together. And we can't wait for you guys to get a look at it. You should definitely go play it. We have a lot of Q&A sessions coming up tomorrow where you can ask questions if we've blown your mind with all this information. And hope you enjoy the rest of the show.